Soon-to-be alumni of WPI, take note. You'll forget 90% of what you learned here within 6 months of your graduation. Now, that didn't come from a peer-reviewed study, but rather my first-year research advisor. He wasn't saying we were about to waste the next 4 years of our lives. He was simply stating a fact, as scandalous as it seemed at the time. But if you think about it more critically, he might be right. I think many of my fellow classmates might agree that by the end of our first year here at WPI, we had learned more than the previous 18 years of our lives. But now, on the eve of our graduation, I've already forgotten so many details. Who honestly remembers here and now how to calculate the curl of a vector field, or how to implement an LRU cache with O1 lookup and insertion time? In fact, when I read through my academic transcript, I realize there are entire classes I've forgotten. Names, faces, syllabi, all a blur. Contemplating this fact, along with my outstanding student loan balance, I faced the sobering question: what has made it all worth it? If it's not the facts and the figures and the formulas we struggle to acquire, what has somehow prepared many of us to head to the Silicon Valleys, Wall Streets, university campuses, and startups in our future? Maybe it isn't so much what we learned, but how we've learned to learn. Suddenly, clear, detailed flashes of learning to learn filled my memory. Those were the unforgettable things, the take it with you when you go kind of things, the lessons you could see repeating to your own children someday. I learned the first lesson in the beginning of my first year at WPI. It was a familiar scene, a gray Worcester winter night in the office of Professor Traver, our professor for the Great Problem Seminar. We were fresh-faced first-year students, all there for one unified purpose: to figure out who in our group was wrong. And it certainly wasn't me. Your average WPI student is used to carrying a heavy load. For those group projects in high school, we were the whole group. We were the people everyone wanted on their team, and no one complained, especially around grading time. But that didn't work as well once all of us leaders were forced to work together on the same team. We all wanted the reins, and none of us wanted to listen. So there we were, crowded into our professor's office in Salisbury, each of us secretly waiting to be vindicated. We were jousting, explaining, and sometimes almost shouting. As I was about to reply to one of my teammates, our professor stopped me and said, "First, tell me what she just said." I stopped. I had a reply ready to go, but could barely recall what she actually just said. I sputtered something out, and she replied, "That's not what I just said." For the rest of the meeting and the rest of the term, our professor made us first repeat what we thought the other person said before replying. That was the day I learned a critical step in learning how to learn: listening. In the words of professor and celebrated author Stephen Covey, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. We've made it through GPS, interactive qualifying projects, major qualifying projects, software engineering, fluids, robotics engineering 1001, and countless other classes. We've lived in tiny residence hall rooms packed with 3 or 4 people and apartments with just 1 bathroom. We made it through because we learned. We learned to listen in order to learn. Listening, though, requires humility. And let's face it, it's easy to be humbled at WPI. In fact, it's a huge factor when considering the value of a WPI education. Consistently being inspired and humbled by many of my classmates here has been a tremendous asset. But outside the security of campus, ego can create walls that deter understanding and keep us locked into our own ways of thinking. Humility breaks through the mental barriers we can place around learning and opens us up to possibilities and ideas we may have never considered. For IQP, our team built an anti-poverty mobile application for social service workers in Paraguay. We were all technical experts, well-versed in the field, creating a mobile app for people who had just recently started using smartphones. We were the experts, or so we thought. We interviewed 7 social service workers through an interpreter and a problematic Wi-Fi connection. At first, most of what we learned through these interviews we already knew. Then, we were punched in the gut. The last question of the interview was, if you could have any new technology in the world, what would it be? A social service worker named Liliana quickly replied, a color printer. We were stunned to silence. We were humbled, and we were listening. Liliana explained how she and her peers took pride in the families they helped. They kept folders with before and after pictures, documenting each family's success in eliminating poverty, like new teeth and a new smile for the mother of one family, or a functional kitchen for another. They cherished these folders, and the black and white pictures just didn't tell the whole story. We went back to the drawing board. We forgot what we thought we knew about poverty and social service work in Paraguay. We learned that we weren't the experts. To make an impact, humility and listening require one additional step: real-world interaction. WPI's motto, theory and practice, couldn't be more appropriate when it comes to how the most important lessons are learned here. What we learn is temporary. What we do is forever. Much of our learning experience here was acquired through doing, practicing what we loved or didn't love, as opposed to merely sitting through seminars or reading from a book. Our learning was acquired through interaction, real work in and with the world around us. We didn't just come up with a fancy plan, turn it into a PowerPoint deck, and call it a day. We left the security of campus and took action in the real world. Taking action is scary, because once in a while, it turns out that the action is wrong. I'm guessing that your IQP or MQP did not end up exactly how you imagined it. I'm guessing that new feature did not work the first time you deployed it or the first time you user tested it. I'm guessing because mine sure didn't. But with humility, we acknowledged the failure. Through listening, we identified the causes. And with action, we tried again. And through the repetition of this cycle, humility, listening, and action, through all of our projects and through all of our endeavors, we learned how to learn. Learning to learn is what we take with us from WPI. The invisible watermark, behind the words on our diploma. It's a vital tool we will carry into the rest of our lives, well worth the price we paid and the sacrifices we made. Learning to learn marks the true value of our time here, a skill not limited by our memory or our ability to recall facts. And now, we are not done learning. We've simply become better learners. Because learning to learn is our path to impact. This ultimately is why we learn to learn, not just for the heck of it, but to enact positive change throughout our local and global communities. So, let us continue to enact positive change. Let us continue to repeat this cycle, humility, listening, and action, throughout the rest of our lives. Let us continue to learn. Let us continue to make an impact. Thank you.